Subaru's built an entire business out of getting you to the trailhead or to the ski slope, and even their Forester and Outback models have a dedicated wilderness trim. But curiously, their biggest vehicle, the one with the most space for gear, food, and dirty boots, doesn't get the wilderness treatment. This is the 2025 Subaru Ascent with blacked out trim and some rugged styling cues, and it certainly looks the part of an off-road capable SUV. But in a segment full of vehicles that talk a big game about adventure while never leaving the pavement, is it the off-road sleeper of the three-row segment, or is it another pretender wearing hiking boots going to the shopping mall? What's it like? Buckle up, my friends. Let's go for a drive. I'm your host, Brian Makse, racer, lover of driving fast, fun things. And on this channel, you get reviews for drivers from drivers. Now, the Ascent is something we've never tested on this channel, and I've always been a little bit curious. No, not because it's a three-row crossover, but because it's Subaru's take on a three-row crossover, and it's bound to have some character, that's for sure. And before we get into what this is like to drive, let's have a look at it in a little more depth. Yes, the Ascent is Subaru's largest vehicle, and for 2025, there are some trim changes, but one notable thing is that you do get a full set of safety tech across the entire range of Subaru Ascents for 2025. Under the hood is a 2.4-liter four-cylinder Boxer engine with a single twin-scroll turbo. It makes 260 horsepower at 5,600 RPM and 277 pounds of torque from 2,000 to 4,800 RPM. And speaking of the engine, while Toyota Highlander owners are bragging about their resale value and Honda Pilot owners are discussing reliability, Ascent owners are the ones explaining what a Boxer engine is to people who didn't ask. Transmission's a CVT, and it does mimic an 8-speed transmission. This is all-wheel drive. It's Subaru's signature all-wheel drive with X mode with hill descent control on some specific trims. Suspension's based around McPherson struts at the front, double wishbone at the rear, four-wheel disc brakes, of course. Wheels and tires are 18s to 20s, depending on trim. This has 8.7 inches of ground clearance, 19 cup holders. Cargo capacity varies from 17.8 cubic feet with a third row up. With the third and second rows down, that expands to 75.6 cubic feet of cargo carrying capacity. This will actually ford almost 20 inches of water. It'll tow up to 5,000 pounds, and curb weight of this Subaru Ascent is 4,500 pounds. Did you know that 80% of you are not subscribed? Yes, it's true. 80% of you are not subscribed. I checked the data. So if you like the content on this channel, do me a solid, hit that subscribe button, make sure you like this, and if you want to support the channel, please hit up our merch store. Links here, links below. Lots of great stuff for driving enthusiasts like us, including our very popular line of Save the Manuals merch. Now back to your regularly scheduled episode. Behind the wheel, we have a very straightforward setup here. Comfortable seat, appropriately shaped steering wheel, lots of adjustment in the seat and the steering column so that anybody can get comfortable here. Really appreciate this seat. Now, Subaru Canada calls this all-weather upholstery. You Americans call it StarTex. It actually has a totally different vibe than some imitation leather, and actually feels very durable and looks very good as well. And I suspect this upholstery will handle all kinds of abuse from busy families for many, many years. And on top of that, it looks very easy to clean as well. The seat's definitely on the medium to large side, certainly comfortable. Basic adjustments. This is a power seat at this trim level, and overall have no problem finding an effective seating position here. One of the reasons people buy crossovers, not just for visibility, but also the hip point of the seat. And here it's just absolutely perfect. Very easy to get in and out of this thing. We have a very straightforward instrument cluster with actual dials, who knew, with some secondary information provided digitally in the center of the instrument cluster, things like fuel consumption and what's going on with the adaptive cruise. Ergonomics are simple and straightforward, no learning curve. There's no funny locations for any of the buttons, switches, dials, whatever the case is. Really appreciate the volume knob and the tuning knob for the infotainment system. Think about this infotainment system. It's fairly basic, fairly straightforward, which is great. And I run it on wireless CarPlay, which makes all the difference in the world. But here's the thing. Right now, this is a great example. I don't know if you can see, but there's some direct sunlight on this screen, and I can't see a good portion of it right now. Not necessarily a big fan of the way that's executed, but in terms of the way it works, it's very simple, straightforward. There's no learning curve. There's plenty of space in here, especially in the first row and the second row. It's all very usable. In this particular model, we've got captain's chairs in that second row, and that leaves the floor open for lots of stuff. I did try living with this with the third row seats folded up in their upright position. That really didn't work for me, so I've dropped them and been able to use the cargo carrying capacity of this Ascent much more readily than if those third row seats were up. They're very easy to drop right to the floor, so you can easily load bigger items through the hatch. In terms of visibility, well, it's a big 3-row crossover with lots of glass all around. You're seated high off the road, so you've got plenty of visibility in all directions. Really appreciate the large outboard mirrors, because when you adjust your outboard mirrors properly along with your rear view mirror, blind spots aren't real. Plus, when you're parking this thing or going off-road, you can take advantage of all the cameras that are around this Ascent. Makes parking a breeze, as well as off-roading a little bit safer. Very impressed with how the cameras work. And when it comes to performance, let's get right into it. We are on an off-road trail. Technically, it's a legal road, but this is much more difficult terrain than any sane Ascent owner will ever see. And it's a great test of this entire vehicle. The X mode is very easy to use. Just get this little screen up here. And we've been driving along in normal for almost the entire time with this Ascent, but here on this trail, we've got basically hard-packed dirt, a little bit of mud, so I've hit snow and dirt, and it transforms how this Ascent feels when we're off-road like we're doing right now. It gives me a lot more confidence. There's also hill descent control, which I had forgotten about until we started descending a hill, and this thing kind of took over managing the downhill speed. Very impressed with that. But what I have to say is, in the snow and dirt mode, this transforms the all-wheel drive system, and instantly I could feel that we've got much more traction, and there is a much more thoughtful distribution of torque going on through the all-wheel drive system, because I feel like I've got traction for days in any of these conditions. We have driven through some mud here as well, and it is impressive. Now let's talk about this engine a little bit. As you've seen, it's buried way deep down in the chassis, and that obviously, just from looking at it, ensures the lowest possible center of gravity. But what I am impressed with is how this engine makes torque, and there is no shortage of torque. No, it's not a rocket ship in a straight line, but it's got more than enough torque to deal with every kind of situation on a day-to-day basis. It'll do 0 to 60 well under 7 seconds, maybe 6.6, 6.7, something like that. Top speed, not that you ever want to bother with that, but top speed is somewhere north of 120, 130 miles an hour. Now, seriously, let's talk about the CVT for just a second. They seem to have reputations that put them slightly above gas station sushi and slightly below airline food. Subaru, however, has been in the game longer than most, and this CVT is actually not terrible. It has those 8 simulated gears that actually work. You can use the shift paddles, and Where it really shines is in everyday driving. And to be fair, this transmission is so well calibrated that you'll use the manual mode exactly twice, once on the test drive and once a week after delivery, just to make sure that it works. Certainly a lot of the credit goes to that Turbo 4 because it makes tons of torque, and that just allows the transmission to lean on that torque without making all kinds of adjustments all the time. And here we're climbing a steep grade. It seems like it does do that in phases. It's not a progressive change in ratios inside the transmission. Really dig the way this works. This is probably the first CVT I really don't mind driving. When it comes to handling, what we're doing right now is a little bit unfair to the Ascent because this doesn't even come with an off-road oriented tire. It happens to be end of winter, so we are on a winter tire at the moment. And even so, we have to remember that this is not an off-road spec kind of SUV or crossover by any stretch of the imagination. But what I am finding here off-road, there is a fantastic amount of ground clearance. No, we haven't had to ford any water here, but there's more than enough ground clearance here to get us through some nasty, nasty terrain. Again, far more than any sane Ascent owner will ever experience. This is definitely more challenging terrain than, the gravel road on the way to your cottage or some dirt road taking you to a hiking trailhead somewhere. I should mention that I really dig what Subaru has done for these cameras because even though this is really not intended to go off-road, these cameras are highly, highly useful, and I've used them a fair bit today. Very impressed. Really well done, Subaru. And now, since we're on the road, X mode has gone back to normal, hill descent control switched off, and we're driving like normal human beings again. On the road, one of the cool things that the Ascent does is it's got something that they call active torque vectoring. It's kind of like Mazda's GVC or GVC Plus, and what it actually does is as you're going through a turn, it grabs the inside rear brake just to give the car a little bit more stability and help you feel a lot more confident going through the corner. Does it very subtly and you don't even notice it. And from a technical standpoint, we just have conventional dampers here, but they do an excellent job with body and wheel control. In day-to-day use, the ride is comfortable, compliant, it's composed going through corners, and then off-road, well, it has no trouble soaking up those bumps either. Very impressed with how well-rounded the suspension is. Brakes are excellent as well. Very happy with the stopping power in any kind of situation. A couple times I did have to use all of the stopping power of these brakes to avoid some crazy Toronto drivers, but in day-to-day use, they are excellent. Great feel and control from this brake pedal as well, whether we're on the road or off-road. The steering is refreshingly honest. When I first got in the Ascent, I really didn't like it, but then I came to realize it doesn't have any of that fake sportiness with artificial heft or pretend feel. Instead, it delivers consistent, predictable responses that prioritize accuracy over feedback, which has been very helpful off-road. On top of that, when it comes to parking this thing, it turns on a dime. And that's the thing. What's most impressive is how the steering helps this Ascent drive smaller than it actually is. And I think the steering is intended to impress real-world drivers, not car reviewers, which is exactly the way it should be. To put its handling in context, it handles with a little bit more composure than something like the Toyota Highlander and maybe a little less precision than the Mazda CX-90. It's kind of in that sweet spot where YouTubers say better than expected and real-world drivers say, well, it just drives like a car. How do you spec yours? Well, when it comes to your Ascent, it's going to come down to how much luxury and how much tech you'd like versus how much you want to spend. What you are looking at is, in Canada, this is called the Sport trim. In the US, it's sort of like the Onyx edition, but they're not quite product planned the same in Canada and the US. This is crystal black silica paint with the black StarTex or all-weather interior, as they call it here in Canada. In Canada, this is $53,995, and these prices are before freight, taxes, fees, etc. For the price of a base model German luxury SUV with cloth interior and no options, you can get yourself a fully equipped Ascent with money left over to buy a kayak that you can use to justify your purchase. My verdict, well, let's start with fuel consumption to get that out of the way. I'm getting 15 miles per gallon or 15 liters per 100 kilometers from my Canadian friends, and that is in unscientific mixed driving, city and highway, fair bit of city driving, and that seems to be what I'm getting. Can't get any better, can't seem to do any worse than that. I'd love to hear from Ascent owners and what you get in the real world. Please let me know in the comments below. I'm very curious. Now, as for this Ascent, we've taken it on all kinds of terrain, far beyond what any sane Ascent owner would do. And while this is not an off-road superhero, it's much more capable than a lot of the competition. What makes this truly stand out isn't extreme articulation of the suspension or massive ground clearance. It's the intelligent application of Subaru's proven all-wheel drive system and X-Mode tech. The dual-function X-Mode with its dedicated snow and dirt and deep snow and mud settings provides genuinely useful traction management that makes a meaningful difference in slippery conditions. No, it won't keep up with a Land Cruiser on serious trails, but it will confidently handle the snowy mountain passes, muddy soccer fields, and rutted cottage roads that actually constitute adventure for most families. And unlike many of its competitors, it does this without sacrificing on-road comfort or fuel consumption. Now, the ultimate question for any vehicle we review is, does it fulfill its intended purpose? For the Ascent, that purpose is providing Subaru loyalists and outdoor-oriented families with a three-row vehicle that maintains the brand's core values. By that measure, it's definitely a success, even if it doesn't excel at traditional automotive journalist scorecards of driving dynamics and luxury appointments. It's not trying to be a performance SUV, an off-road SUV, a luxury statement, or even best in class at any performance metric. And I think what this Ascent does is it manages to be a Subaru on a much bigger scale, and on that basis, it definitely succeeds. Thanks for hanging out with me today and having a look at this 2025 Subaru Ascent. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, you're not new, you know what to do. Smash the subscribe button, turn on your notifications, like this, and as always, sharing is caring, so please share this with your friends, especially on Reddit, because on Reddit, they really need to see reviews for drivers from drivers. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if you want to support the channel, please hit up our merch store. Links here, links below. Lots of great stuff for driving enthusiasts like us, including a very popular line of Save the Manuals merch. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you again next time. And remember, cars don't understeer by themselves, not even Subaru Ascents. And since you've hung around this long, well, have a look at what is perhaps my favorite Subaru to drive, the BRZ TS. Did an episode on that a little while ago, and I think you'll appreciate it. Thanks again for watching. See you again next time.